What up, Hyperchange? Welcome to another episode. Today we're talking about my second favorite asset, not Tesla, Bitcoin. Wanted to do an update on the cryptocurrency. It was just blockchain week here in New York City, so went to a couple events about Bitcoin and the blockchain, been talking to a bunch of people in the space. Additionally, as I'm making this episode, Bitcoin is hitting 2019 highs of around $8,000 per Bitcoin. It's been on a tear, so I wanted to make an overall update episode, talking about my thoughts about Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency, additionally going through a bunch of charts about all the fundamentals so we can see how those are changing as well as the price. So let's get right into it. To start, here's the chart of Bitcoin year to date. It has been on a tear, for a past year or two. It's been sort of like a crypto winter, but now it looks like we are emerging out of that. Bitcoin is already up over 100% year to date in 2019. And actually, this is a little bit of bragging, but I did buy Bitcoin and reinitiate a big chunk of my position in early 2019 when it was around 3,900. I'll put a link in the description so you can watch that episode. But so I still own my Bitcoin. If we zoom out, you can see that Bitcoin here is in that, long-term uptrend. We had a huge spike in 2018. That was like the peak of Bitcoin mania when it hit almost 20,000. And then we had basically a 2-year, almost, or 1.5, 2-year long slide that a lot of people are calling the crypto winter, or that's how I was referring to it. But now it looks like we're emerging there. And you can see that Bitcoin has been on a tear throughout 2019, more than doubling from under 4,000 to around 8,000 today. So now let's go under the hood and look at some of the fundamentals of Bitcoin's network to see how those are evolving. So the first thing I look at when analyzing Bitcoin is the transactions. How many transactions per day are occurring on the network? This is super important to me because I believe, fundamentally, the value of a currency is predicated on its utility. How useful is that currency? And when we're talking about blockchain, cryptocurrencies, a huge piece of their value and utility is how many transactions can you process? The more transactions your system can process, the more value it has, because the more potential disruption it has, because the more use cases it can tackle. And so this is why I think Bitcoin transactions per day are a huge piece of the puzzle. And you could get into saying, oh, well, layer 2 transactions are also happening, et cetera, et cetera. Sure. But these are transactions on the main blockchain. I think this is a really interesting metric to look at the health of the network. And as you can see, we hit a high around that price peak in late 2017, early 2018. And now we've actually seen an uptrend. So the Bitcoin network, once again, doing about 350,000 transactions every single day and rising. And why I think this is really important and actually super encouraging is if we overlay this and compare this with the cost per transaction. So this is the average cost per transaction on the Bitcoin network. As you can see, it's been spiking to about $40 average cost per transaction. But at one point, it was over $160 during the last price spike. So if we go back and forth between these two charts, you'll see that even though we're at peak transactions, we're still doing about 400,000 transactions, the most the network's ever done. The average fee on the network is only about 1/4 of what it was the last time we were at that 400,000 transaction mark. So in theory, the network is getting significantly efficient or more efficient at processing transactions, or that's at least what my read from this. So I think that's a really good sign that the network is growing up and improving. So now we're going to look at the hash rate, which is the actual security of the network, essentially how much computing power the network has, so you can see how much computing power it would take to do sort of an attack on the network and take down Bitcoin. So as you can see, there was sort of a pullback when the price of Bitcoin went down throughout late 2018, but now the hash rate has been steadily increasing. And what I think is really fascinating is if you take a look at the hash rate of Bitcoin relative to every other of the main cryptocurrencies, Ethereum, Bitcoin Cash, Litecoin, they barely even show up on the chart here. So you can see that the security of the Bitcoin network is about a magnitude larger than that of any of its competitors, and this makes it significantly more secure and therefore significantly more valuable as potentially a global reserve currency or digital gold. And so this is one of the key fundamentals that makes Bitcoin, in my opinion, fundamentally more value than a lot of other cryptocurrencies. And the other thing here is cent in USD. This is an incredible chart to me. So once again, you see that spike when we had the crypto boom late 2018, and then we've seen a pullback during crypto winter, and now recovery to about back over $1 billion of transactions per day. That it bottomed out around a couple $100 million of transactions per day. So I mean, this is impressive. This is a US dollar amount transacted on the Bitcoin blockchain. Over $1 billion per day. People are moving money. So this is, why Bitcoin has a lot of value in my opinion. Like, it's working, it's out there in the real world. I would consider this one of the only cryptocurrency applications or cryptocurrencies that is actually really being used. I mean, $1 billion transacted every day. That's really, really impressive stuff. And so I think to see that going up as well is super encouraging. Now, these are all stats of the main Bitcoin blockchain. Now, one of the key theories about Bitcoin and its expansion in the mainstream is this theory of L2 solutions, layer 2 solutions that will allow for for cheaper, smaller, faster payments, but with a little bit less security. And so the main one of these projects that you may have heard about is the Lightning Network, which will allow you to do super fast transactions. This is something Jack Dorsey has been a proponent of. This whole vision of buying a cup of coffee with Bitcoin is being realized, or is trying to be realized by these things like the Lightning Network, which are built for much smaller transactions. And so one of the key things I'm looking at for Bitcoin fundamentally is how big is the Lightning Network? What is the progress of that? Because I think that could be a huge, catalyst for mainstream adoption and grow the value of Bitcoin overall. And so, but what's been a little bit disappointing is despite this huge run in Bitcoin, if you actually look at the Lightning Network statistics, you can see that even though the amount of USD in the Lightning Network is going up, that blue line, to about 8 million, the amount of Bitcoin locked up in the Lightning Network is capped at about 1,000 and has been flat for a month. So the growth in the Lightning Network has actually been stalling for about the past 2 months. And this would be a little bit concerning to me because I think a big piece of Bitcoin, evolution is these layer 2 solutions. So I'd really want to see some more progress here. Moving on to the overall value of Bitcoin. So this is the fun stuff, and this is a lot more theoretical. And I will say that Bitcoin, I own a little bit of it. I think it's probably about 8 to 10% of my overall portfolio now. It was a lot less, but Tesla's come down, Bitcoin's gone up, so that's where it is now. But I think Bitcoin is an incredibly risky investment. Like a lot of the things that I invest in, like Tesla, I think it's speculative. It's sort of like a venture capital style investment. I think the technology and use case hasn't really been proven, but there's a huge upside and disruptive potential if it hits its end goal. And so now let's talk about what those end goals are and why I get so excited about even Bitcoin being at 8,000 and why I'm holding on personally. And so this is the all-time market cap of Bitcoin. So as you can see, that pretty much the same as the price. Chart looks very similar. Today we are at a market capitalization of 140 billion. Just for reference, 140 billion is about 2 times what Uber's worth and about 4 times what Tesla is worth right now. So Bitcoin, larger than some of the largest companies already in terms of network value. And so now let's talk about the use cases for Bitcoin and why this value may or may not be justified. So the first one that I start of so the first one and the simplest one, and the reason why I'm invested in Bitcoin, is a store of value use case. What if Bitcoin becomes digital gold? Gold has been this store of value for centuries, a hedge against inflation, a way to preserve wealth through this precious metal, and gold has captured a huge amount of value in our economy because of that, inflation adjusted store value use case. And so if you look at the total value of gold in the entire world, it's about $7.5 trillion. And so if you assume that Bitcoin is a digital version of gold, store of value, finite supply at 21 million, actually easier and cheaper to send than physical gold, easier to divide than physical gold, it's potentially even could be worth more than physical gold, just as digital gold 2.0. So if you think the digitization of gold could increase the market cap of gold from, could maybe double the market cap of gold, but we won't even go there. But so the value of the gold in circulation today is about 7.5 trillion. 7.5 trillion divided by 21 million Bitcoins, all the most that will ever be in circulation. We're looking at about $357,000 per Bitcoin. That is approximately 44 times upside from 8,000 per coin that we're at today. You still have 44 times your money if you believe that Bitcoin will eventually be worth as much as gold is today in US dollar terms. And what I think is interesting is, remember, if the digitization of gold happens, we have a better version of gold. Maybe that store value use case goes up to 15 trillion, and we're looking at 714,000 per Bitcoin just on this store of value use case. And so that is one way to look at Bitcoin. And this is the sort of base case scenario that gets me excited, is I think we just need a digital internet currency. We need something that's built for the internet, that's, inherently software, that's code, that's open source. It just seems like a natural native currency for the internet. And I think at least a store of value in between fiat currencies. And so, I'm invested in Bitcoin because I think this is a potential outcome if it succeeds and if the network scales. But beyond that, there's a potentially thesis that's even way more exciting about Bitcoin, which is the world currency use case. If Bitcoin really becomes the internet's native currency, there's more people on the internet than there are in China, India, and the US. The internet is the world's largest country. And so if the Bitcoin becomes the internet's native currency, this has huge potential. Just to put it in context, the global money supply right now is about $90 trillion, all the amount of money in the world. And if we do that same calculation, 90 trillion divided by 21 million Bitcoin, we're looking at $4.3 million per Bitcoin, which is about a 500 337x upside from 8,000. So this is a totally crazy bull case, but this just goes to show you that essentially money for the internet, people who see this really long-term vision as Bitcoin replacing the US dollar, the euro, the yuan, and being a new backbone of the digital economy, are seeing this, multi-tens of trillion, $90 trillion market cap potential, which values it at $4.3 million per Bitcoin. And so, those are the two bull cases I see. It's digital gold 2.0 or internet's native currency. But, those are I think those are good scenarios. I think Bitcoin transacting billions of dollars per day is great. Doing hundreds of thousands of transactions per day is great, but we still need to see the network scale to get more accessible. Bitcoin is still in its early days of development, and so it has a long way to go to get to being digital gold 2.0 or the world reserve currency. But at the same time, you do have a lot of, upside if those, theories actually occur. And at the end of the day, the reason why I'm so fascinated by Bitcoin, and, I've been following Bitcoin, a little bit of history, the Hyperchange, the YouTube channel you're watching, I actually started because I invested about $1,500 in Bitcoin, around 500 or 600, cashed out around an average of 13,000 per Bitcoin, made around 20 grand in profits, used that to pay my rent for 6 months and get my YouTube channel off the ground. So I love Bitcoin. I bought back in at 3,900, like my episode says, and I've been holding it just as a little piece of my portfolio because, I believe in this disruption. I think, just because something's new and different and hasn't been done before, and I look at the internet, I look at the economy, and I just think it makes sense that there should be a digitally native piece of software that transacts value far more efficiently than paper or gold. And this whole concept of trusting algorithms instead of central banks, I love it. I think this entire central bank model of the Federal Reserve, of a couple people in a room deciding how much money we should print, deciding what the interest rates are, is just archaic. And this theory of an open source financial algorithm, which is essentially what Bitcoin is, math, that's the really philosophical debate here. Do we want an inflationary fiat system governed by humans, or do we want a deflationary system governed by algorithms and code, which is Bitcoin? And I think this is a fascinating debate that we're watching play out. I would argue Bitcoin, it's what is it now, 10 or 15 years old? It's got a market cap of $140 billion. It's got more than $1 billion worth of it being moved every day, hundreds of thousands of transactions. Everybody, you ask somebody on the street, maybe they hate Bitcoin or think it's weird or crazy, but they've heard of it, so the brand value's there. I mean, this is one of an incredibly successful experiment in new payment technology and financial infrastructure. That's, I think people don't realize that. So anyway, I'm fascinated by Bitcoin, and I think, the payment system and financial infrastructure I think about in the future is one that's digitally native, and a digitally native cryptocurrency seems like it could play a huge role in the future of the monetary system. Bitcoin is the leader in terms of adoption, in terms of market cap, in terms of code, in terms of hash rate, in terms of developer ecosystem. And so this is a fascinating, if you're a finance or economics nerd, I think and you're not fascinated by Bitcoin, then you're not actually a finance economic nerd, because this is one of the most exciting things that can think that's happening in the world of finance and technology. So that's why I'm following on Hyperchange. That's why I own a little Bitcoin. Just let me know what you think in the comments below, and would love to get your opinions on Bitcoin, on the recent rise, on the fundamental statistics that I laid out. If there's anything I'm missing, let me know. Anyway, huge shout out to our Patreon supporters, producers, funding the channel. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.